Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we are back with the Champions League coverage, covering probably the two best teams left in the tournament, Manchester City versus Bayern Munich. And what a game it was. It was a really good game of football. Of course, you kind of expect that when you have these quality players on display, but also two brilliant tactical masterminds who are constantly making tweaks during the game to try and figure each other out. So today I want to talk about kind of what went down in the game and how Manchester City eventually won the game 3-0. I think the scoreline flatters them a little bit. They were the better team in my opinion, but 3-0 is a little bit harsh on Bayern, but City were just absolutely ruthless. So let's just get straight into it and talk about the tactics and start with City trying to play out from the back, because as we know so often that is what they look to do, and particularly from goal kicks, they actually found it really easy to outnumber Bayern. And the reason for that is because Ederson is such a good ball playing goalkeeper. So what they do at goal kicks, Ederson drops here, and Diaz is alongside him, and these are the only two players that they have in the box. They then have Stones, Rodri, Ake and Akanji in a line across. Now recently it has been Stones starting at right back and Akanji at centre back, however it was the other way around in this game, but we will come back onto that later. However, what this shape from City does is it allows them to really easily outnumber Bayern. Let's say Bayern want to push forward and the goal kick is taken, Gnabry's now going to push forward and so is Musiala. Bayern now have 4 players pressing in this area. City have 6 players there. 6 players who are all extremely comfortable on the ball. I mean, Diaz is probably the least comfortable on the ball, which kind of says something because he's good on the ball. So 6 players here who are easily going to play through this Bayern press. So it meant that from the start, especially that first 10 minutes of the game, City were getting out and able to kind of have possession which they wanted. From here, Manchester City then went into more of a 3-2 shape, kind of as they moved the ball forwards towards the middle third. Again, a shape which they use a lot at the moment, with Stones, on this particular occasion, moving from centre-back to midfield, and Akanji and Ake being either side of Diaz. And again, what we can see is that they will outnumber the Bayern players, because we've got Coman, Musiala, Sane and Gnabry up against 5 Manchester City players. So there were just genuine spells in the game where City, because they're so technically good, they connect well with each other and actually quite easily play through Bayern, because when you've got technical players in a 5 versus 4, they are able to work the overload. However, to be fair, Bayern still actually done pretty well. And what Bayern looked to do was kind of use Ake or Akanji as the trigger to go press. So let's say Akanji's got the ball on this side, he might step forward or something, or he might receive the pass from Diaz. This is where Sane's now going to come over, Gnabry's going to come onto Diaz, Musiala on Stones, and then Coman, the far side winger, is going to come in on the other 6, Rodri. So they're trying to make a mini 4 versus 4 here basically. Kind of, they're removing Ake from the equation as such, and trying to camp City into this 4 versus 4 position. For spells of the game, this did cause genuine problems for Manchester City, because these Bayern players are pretty good in their press, they're Bayern, they're always pretty good. However, again, City just have really good technical footballers, and what we kind of saw as the game went on a little bit after that first 20-minute spell, was the centre-backs for City taking a bit more responsibility on the ball, and a few more risks as well actually. Stepping forward, looking to take on their man. So it might be Akanji here attempting to step past Sane, or it might be Ake on this side attempting to step past Coman in this area, or even Diaz in the middle. I thought he was really good, stepping past Gnabry kind of into these areas, and then allowing City to play into the midfield, because that's essentially kind of breaking the Bayern structure by stepping forward with the ball. It's making the Bayern player lose their little 1 versus 1, which gives City again the authority to then kind of step forward and try and move forward. I want to talk to you about an amazing tool to help you become a more composed and confident footballer. Be Your Best is football training in virtual reality. Developed by experts in Norway, it's the perfect way to improve cognitive performance, improving scanning, decision making and memory from anywhere in the world. In Be Your Best, you will go through over 800 scenarios recreated from professional games. A bit like this one from Luka Modric. You'll play from his point of view and receive feedback for your performance along the way. Be Your Best is used by athletes from all around the world, with Arsenal star Martin Odegaard using it in his return from injury, and it's also backed by science, with a recent 9-week study seeing players increase their scan rate by a staggering 28%, and now you can get 20% off your first month or year by using code HUB20 at checkout. So make sure to use beyourbest.com or use the link in the description. Now, when this did happen, Bayern of course are really good at retreating and getting back into shape, and their shape was extremely narrow in a 4-2-3-1. And the reason for this is because they were so worried about Rodri, Stones, De Bruyne and Gundogan forming a box midfield and outnumbering them. So what Bayern done was they brought their wingers really central, Coman and Sane, Gnabry's reasonably deep, got Musiala in this area as well. They've almost got 5 central midfielders. And basically they're trying to stop City from creating the overload in this area, which to me seems like a pretty smart idea. However, City did have a counter to this, and it was actually really intelligent from Pep Guardiola. What he started to do was drop Erling Haaland a little bit deeper. So again, let's use the right hand side as the example. Haaland starts to drop into this position here. Now De Ligt and Upamecano didn't seem too keen on following him when he dropped this deep. Maybe they didn't think he was a threat, maybe they were worried about other runs. For one reason or another, they didn't really follow him. However, what Haaland dropping does is it now ties up Goretzka. Because Goretzka here now has to follow Haaland. But this means that De Bruyne has a little bit of room. And this made it quite easy for Manchester City to progress the ball in wide areas. And throughout the game, really, this didn't change at any point. City were really, really good at moving the ball forward, down the lines and getting into dangerous positions. Because what I've now got is De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva in a 2 versus 1 up against Alphonso Davies. Now, Alphonso Davies is a wonderful left-back, one of the best left-backs in the world. But even he can't deal with a 2 versus 1 of De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva. It's just too much quality. And the same happens on the other side as well. Let's say Haaland might drop into this position, so now Kimmich is going to be tied up with Haaland. Gundogan can kind of step out of the Bayern midfield, if you like, out of the Bayern structure, get the ball here, and now it's 2 versus 1, Gundogan and Grealish up against Pavard. And this just created a really easy method of ball progression for Manchester City, and I thought the two wingers were absolutely brilliant. Their timing of when to slow it down and keep the ball for Manchester City, their ball retention, absolutely phenomenal. But also, when they wanted to, they were going past their man with ease at times. Even Bernardo Silva up against Alphonso Davies, even when it was 1 versus 1. The physicality of Alphonso Davies, the athleticism, you'd probably expect him to deal with it. But Bernardo Silva is just so intelligent, so technical, that he managed to squeeze past him several times. And also Grealish, I thought he was phenomenal in this game. I think he has been since the World Cup, but this game in particular, his ability to get Manchester City moving up the pitch was just so good. And then once he's in these areas, he's happy to cut inside. We might then have Aki overlapping, and the amount of back heels we saw from Grealish into Aki in this area, really good. And again, it just allows City to keep moving the ball forward. This wide progression really was the best way for them. Now, just the other thing I want to touch on for City in possession, because this was ultimately how they really created chances, was their ability to create overloads in the final third. When Grealish and Bernardo Silva are carrying the ball forward, Gundogan and De Bruyne are making runs from the midfield into the forward line. It gives Manchester City a front 5 up against the back 4 of Bayern. I go on about it all the time on the channel. It works really well when you have the quality of this front 5, maybe the best front 5 in the world, up against the back 4. If you can make that overload, outnumber them, it's just really effective. What City also done really well though, was they didn't just run into blind alleys. If Grealish doesn't have success here, he keeps the ball, he comes back, he goes to Gundogan, to Rodri, and then the switch is on constantly. The same can obviously happen on this side as well. If Bernardo Silva can't get forward, he turns around, comes back, goes to John Stones, but then again you've got to switch on, and City were just ruthless. Having generated these switches, these overloads in the final third, City are just really good. There aren't many teams that can deal with them, and to be fair, Sommer actually done well to keep Tuchel's side in it. However, what I would be really disappointed about, if I was Tuchel, was the fact that actually the goals kind of came down to errors. Upamecano just completely collapsed. He actually had a pretty good first hour, but just completely collapsed after making mistakes. We've seen it in the past. Too many individual mistakes in their own defensive third from Bayern. Like I said, I think Manchester City were a better team and they played really well. And I really liked the setup which Guardiola went for. I thought from a tactical point of view, it allowed them to overload Bayern in pretty much every area of the pitch. I thought that was really good. But in terms of the actual clear-cut chance creation, Bayern should have done so much better individually. So that's where I feel a little bit sorry for Tuchel. But on Tuchel, let's just have a look at what Bayern done in possession. Because whilst it was 3-0 to Manchester City, it looks really one-sided. It wasn't quite as one-sided as that, although, however, I still think City did edge it. So the first thing that we can see when we look at Bayern's build-up shape is that they just don't have the same overload in deeper areas which City had. We were talking about City having 5 players deep and only 4 Bayern players can press them. City, however, when they didn't have the ball, were in more of a man-to-man system initially, and this was because Bayern were building in a 2-4 shape, with Davies and Pavard either side of Kimmich and Goretzka. But this allowed City to go quite aggressive and match them in a 4-4-2. So you've got De Bruyne and Haaland match up with the centre-backs naturally, the wingers on the wingers, and the wingers on the full-backs, and then the 2 midfielders on the 2 central midfielders. It worked really well for Manchester City. During the first 20-30 minutes, they were able to quickly get the ball back because this 4-4-2 shape was working really well. Now, like I've said already, Tuchel's a really good manager, so he does kind of adapt. We saw Pavard dropping a little bit deeper and drawing Grealish out, and what this done was just create these little channels of space here. So now Upamecano can come into the feet of someone like Coman, or maybe Kimmich can get the ball on the half turn in this area, where we know that Bayern are obviously very good. What we also saw in this area was the willingness of Musiala to drop deeper. So he's not necessarily playing as a striker, he's dropping into this pocket. And at times, John Stones did follow him and he was nice and aggressive and nice and tight, stopped them turning. However, there were also situations where he wouldn't go as tight. And what this means is that once Grealish has been drawn out of this position here, and Bayern get into this area, they've now got three midfielders in Kimmich, Goretzka and Musiala, up against just the two of Gundogan and Rodri. And this was actually a real problem for Manchester City, because, like I've said already, when you give quality players the overload, they normally punish you. And another day I think Bayern would have, and I think they would have scored goals in this game. But simply, the players didn't deliver. I thought Goretzka was poor, Musiala's quality on the ball, he wasn't as technically secure as he normally is. Gnabry physically didn't look anywhere near it. Koeman was, to be fair, just completely locked down by Ake. We've seen him do it to Saka recently. He done it to Koeman in this game. Just brilliant 1-versus-1 defending. I thought the attacker who did bring something was Leroy Sané, kind of cutting in from the left-hand side. But his efforts from range, Ederson was able to deal with them. And like I said, during these stages, Bayern should have taken their chances. They should have been better on the ball because they could have really hurt City. And as we know with this City team, when they are facing problems, they will adapt. And we saw that in the second half. They changed their structure. Rodri off the ball was moved a little bit deeper, and as was De Bruyne. We've still got Grealish on Pavard here. We've still got Haaland on Upamecano. But now Bernardo Silva is going to be pushed a little bit higher. And rather than just following Alphonso Davies, he's basically going to be tasked with pressing De Ligt and Alphonso Davies. And, you know, saying that about another player in another team, in another system, you'd say that's a problem. But it just isn't with Bernardo Silva, just because he's so good at football. And his work rate, his intelligence, again, off the ball, his ability to press, is second to none, really, with other wingers in the world. Really, really good pressing winger, which means that he's able to take out Alphonso Davies, but also apply pressure to De Ligt as well. And this, to a large extent, really nullified Bayern, because they now haven't got this midfield overload, they haven't got the ball progression, and yeah, again, it was just a really good adaptation from Pep Guardiola. There were more which we saw in the game. There was a bit more tinkering from Tuchel, which then Guardiola reacted to, but I feel like what we've covered in the video up to this point were the most important ones. For me, City just edged it. I think Pep Guardiola just edged the tactical battle. Like I said, for me, 3-0 is really harsh. I don't think Bayern deserved that, although maybe they did because they shot themselves in the foot with some silly mistakes. But in terms of tactically, they didn't deserve 3-0. City did deserve to win maybe 1-0, 2-0, something like that, and it would have set up a really interesting second leg. Now, though, it's hard to see City going out from here. However, we would have said the same at one stage last season about Real Madrid and Manchester City, so this game isn't done. Bayern is still very much in this. They've still got a lot of good players and a really good tactical manager, but I just find it hard to see Pep Guardiola's side throwing this one away. But we will have to wait and see. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think it's tie over? Personally, I don't think it is quite. But what do you think went wrong for Bayern in this game? Why were they individually so bad in certain spells? Tactically, was it wrong from Tuchel? In my opinion, it was a little bit. I think City's build-up phase and even their defensive setup just allowed them to outnumber Bayern in most situations. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.